Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us during this presentation where we're going to talk about fostering Black entrepreneurship on campus. We are considering this the new path to the path to a new Black Wall Street. As Andrea mentioned, you're going to notice QR codes on various slides, which you can scan using your mobile device. So if you will notice on the lower left-hand corner, that's where most of them are going to appear. And all you have to do is open up the camera app on your phone and scan that QR code, and it will take you to either some questions just to kind of test your knowledge, or it will lead you to some very valuable resources that we hope you will find helpful. Also, I want to tell you a little bit about what our agenda for today is going to look like. We'll go into a little bit more about who we are. We'll talk about the historical context of Black Wall Street. We're going to look at what some of the existing campuses are doing in terms of programming. And then we're going to look at some specific research and best practices from those research studies. We'll look at relevance and our prognosis based on that information. And then we want to introduce you to some of the solutions that we think will be beneficial to you based on the research studies that we've been involved with. And then after that, we're going to open up discussion and have you ask any questions, and hopefully we'll be able to provide answers to those. And also be mindful of the chat. There will be some additional information there just in case you have any technical issues with those QR codes. So as Andrea mentioned, my name is LaRochelle Smith, and I'm an MBA. I'm also a PhD candidate for leadership in higher education. As she mentioned as well, I am the managing director for Table Salt Group. And in that role, I'm able to drive the mission of our organization, which is to help people enhance self-efficacy, grow and progress through self-awareness and mentorship. And I also specialize in learning exceptionalities in persons with disabilities in terms of leadership strategies to help them succeed in education as well as the workplace. We are a women and veteran-owned certified business. As I mentioned, our focus is on leadership and entrepreneurship. We want to provide you with a comprehensive and holistic approach to leadership, also promoting entrepreneurship, healthy organizations, and of course, leading to a stronger economy. Some of our most notable curriculum has involved leadership training for early career professionals, 6 essential leadership skills to grow into professional positions. We do a series that focuses specifically on healthy living for leaders. And then today we're going to talk a little bit more of what is, I think, more applicable to this, this subject, which is the Business Squad. In the process of growing Table Salt Group, we found that strategic alliances are very important, because not only can we supplement in areas where we may not have certain skill sets, but we can kind of lean on each other for a community of support. And today I have with me one of my favorite strategic partners. She is someone that I've known probably since the beginning of this year, but I feel like I've known her much longer than that. She and I have had some great conversations about our research, and also she's the reason why I'm here doing this presentation today. This is my first time presenting at the BDN conference, and I found it to be very, very beneficial in terms of the networking. So I thank you, Dr. Lamel, for your invitation, and turn it over to you for your introduction.
Thank you, LaRochelle. I am so excited to be here. I just want to say hello and welcome to everyone. Welcome and thank you to those who were with me on Thursday in turning research into revenue and decided to come back over today to hear our presentation on fostering Black entrepreneurship on campus. Like LaRochelle said, this is a collaboration between the Table Salt Group and the Clever site, and I'm really excited about the content that we're going to be presenting today. So I'm, again, Tanisha Tanisha, owner of the Clever site, where we help small businesses do it big online. And we do that through beautiful web design and clever digital marketing strategies to help small business owners not just have a beautiful website or just a pretty online brochure, but to actually have a tool that can help them grow their business, attract new leads, to automate processes and just make it more efficient for them as a business owner. So we do that again through several different clever strategies and business consulting. Part of the business consulting that I do is built on the research that I did with my modified Delphi study, identifying best practices for minority and women small business owners in government contracting. So I'll be sharing more of that study with you in this presentation. But again, all of that is what we do at the Clever site to help small business owners and entrepreneurs really grow their business and understand the strategy behind their business to be successful.
So I'd like to start with a bit of a historical perspective, looking at the prosperity and wealth building, where we found that in the early 1900s, Black entrepreneurship proved to be the vehicle to prosperity and generational wealth. And of course, we know post-Civil War era was when numerous districts rose to economic prominence through community investment. Even Dr. Martin Luther King, in his I Have a Dream speech, implored the audience to strengthen Black institutions. During that post-Civil War period, communities began to emerge, specifically in Richmond, Virginia, which is known as the birthplace of Black capitalism and probably one of the first known Black Wall Streets. Due to its establishment of multiple banks and insurance companies, it was the home of the first Black-owned bank back in 1906, the St. Luke Penny Savings Bank. Over 100 cities with prosperous districts were called Black Wall Street. Most notable of those is Parish Street in Durham, North Carolina, as well as the Greenwood District in Tulsa, Oklahoma. If you scan the QR code in the lower left-hand corner, you'll be taken to a quiz to see how much of your history you know about Black Wall Street. So please take a moment to do that if you will. Also, I just want to mention that during that time, it began to emerge a phenomenon known as white capping, and it also had become adapted into law where systemic practices of destruction and discriminatory and unlawful acquisition of Black property and assets began to emerge. So for example, they were building highways through prosperous Black districts, and also it was very notable to realize in the research that even before bombs were dropped in Japan in the 1940s, this period in Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma is where, of course, we've heard a lot about the massacre during that time. And there it was as extreme as where people were even in the streets as well as in the air in private planes, dropping bombs literally on this 38 square blocks of this district called the Greenwood District, excuse me. Moving on to what we know about the minority economic status, what we found is that unemployment, of course, tends to be higher among Blacks, primarily due to the fact that 20% of pre-pandemic jobs held were having a telecommuting option. And unfortunately, those from communities of color were not involved in position or jobs or things that involved telecommuting. So it contributed to that rate. Also during pre-pandemic era, there were low unemployment experienced by all ethnicities except for the Black community. Even with the education levels, we found that Black unemployment rate was still double that of others. When we talk about the pre-pandemic economy, we're also finding that 50% of Black households had single wage earners as compared to the white households, where there were almost half that had at least 2 wage earners. Tanisha?
Yes. So the post-pandemic, thank you for sharing about the pre-pandemic situation. So I want to share on this slide a little bit about what's been going on with entrepreneurship, specifically with Blacks, since the pandemic has started. And it's very similar to what happened after the Great Depression. We understand that, minorities have suffered at higher rates because of COVID-19. They've suffered not only medically because of the disease, but also financially. We see right here how it has affected entrepreneurship overall. The Census Bureau showed that 3.2 million applications for employee identification numbers, or EINs, were put in comparison to 2.7 million at the same time last year. So over a million new applications are showing new business owners, new entrepreneurs entering the market as a result of this pandemic. And that goes back to Light's theory of 1979, the disadvantage theory, that several people enter entrepreneurship, specifically Blacks entered entrepreneurship during times of pandemic or during times of disadvantage. They're compelled to entrepreneurship as a way for income. It's a way to create income. So the disadvantage theory is just elated here again in this particular situation with the pandemic. There has been some government response, which we'll talk about a little bit later in another slide. Actually, we can go ahead and move to the next slide. So in addition to having more entrepreneurs, more applications for EIN numbers, entrepreneurs are also having to pivot the way that they do business. So not only are there new entrepreneurs, but the current entrepreneurs and current small businesses are offering new services and trying to find new opportunities within the post-pandemic market. Some of the government responses to entrepreneurship, specifically minority and women, at HBCUs, there was a 1980 initiative to help HBCUs as well as minority serving institutions with entrepreneurship on campus. The government initiatives, there have been under Carter, Obama, as well as Trump, to assist with an access of education. One of the things that I found in my study is that obviously, we already know a lot that as entrepreneurs, we have different challenges and more challenges. So the existing theories, existing small business theories, do not always apply to the minority or women small business owners. And because they do not apply, and because our situation is different, there have been some government initiatives to help in this area. However, if we don't know about those initiatives or don't have access to those initiatives, then they can't be helped. And that's why we're really pushing and encouraging fostering this Black entrepreneurship on campus, so that our entrepreneurs, the generations that will come behind us, they will have more access to this information. And again, this slide will just show you a few of the other initiatives: the 2012 Initiative on Education Excellence for African Americans, 2017, and then most recently the CARES Act, which did allocate $1 billion for HBCUs, TCUs, and MSIs. How this information, these funds are being used is very important. Again, that the programs in place are targeted specifically towards minority and women business owners, because again, the current theories that exist for small business owners do not always apply to the MWBE, the minority or women small business owner. LaRochelle?
Thank you, Tanisha. And so in mentioning some of the government initiatives that were brought onto some of the campuses in those periods of time, we've also had some initiatives that were relative to our grassroots organization. So for example, the 400 Years of African American History Commission has provided grassroots funding to organizations like Table Salt Group. So here recently, we received funding to do some work in the Greenwood district in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to study some of the, not necessarily focusing so much on what happened to eradicate some of the success that we saw in that period, but put more focus on what were some of the best practices that were being carried out amongst that community in order for it to become as affluent that it has been. And so if you've made a visit to Tulsa, Oklahoma here recently, you'll notice that it's not nearly as expansive as it was in that time, but there's so much potential and so much growth that it has taken place and is still going to take place. And so we hope with this funding that came through the 400 Years of African American History Commission will be able to define again those best practices and implement some of that into curricula in the local school districts and beyond. And I'd also like to make mention that our very own Andrea, who is moderating this workshop today, has been selected as the program manager who will be overseeing a lot of activity that goes on with that event. So in the end of this presentation, we want you to keep that in mind because we'll be seeking to have people participate. If you have any connections with Tulsa, Oklahoma and the Greenwood District or not, we'd still like to get you involved. So just wanted to make note of that as well. So moving on to some of those common themes and best practices that we said we would share with you in this presentation today. We're going to look specifically at the study that Dr. Lamel had done on minority contractors. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into what is called the Business Quad Squad, and we're going to look at some of those emerging themes that came from the research on the history of Black Wall Street, specifically in the Greenwood District.
Great. So the previous slide is actually one of my favorite slides because the model there really demonstrates the partnership between the Table Salt Group and the Clever Site, between La Rochelle and myself, the research that was conducted. So my passion, I started my research on small business minority contractors because I realized personally how a government contract can truly change the trajectory of any business. So government contracts are a huge part of many small businesses, how small businesses become viable, how they remain viable, and it's very important to our economy overall. So unfortunately, 50% of small businesses, only 50% of small businesses survive beyond 5 years, and even less than that beyond 10 years. So obviously that number is scary for many people, but it's even scarier for minority-owned businesses because the number is even larger. So I conducted a modified Delphi study, as I mentioned. It was a qualitative study where I had 15 successful NWBEs who had multiple government contracts with the city of Houston. And I was able to get a consensus of 26 best practices. And these are the 26 things that they decided they came to a consensus were the things that made them be successful multiple times, as well as the things that helped them to overcome the challenges that they had identified doing government contracts. What I found was the results from the study can inform future curriculum for entrepreneurship anywhere. They can definitely be applied to any small business owner because although if you can do a government contract, then you can do business because there's the amount of red tape, the amount of focus and detail that it takes to not only secure a government contract, but to also manage that government contract, deliver and perform, and be invited back a second time for another opportunity to do a government contract. So the study revealed results, again, that can inform future curriculum, and it is definitely already informing other small business owners. As I said, I use it in my consulting and coaching, and it's information that is viable to the small business community, specifically viable to MWBEs and future MWBEs.
And as Dr. Lamel mentioned, there is a lot of synergy in the study that she had completed with her Delphi research and what has been developed into what I consider the Business Quad Squad. So just to give you a little bit of context and background, I did some work with a large HBCU research institution in the state of Texas. And in the process of working there in research and with the community, I provided technical assistance to hundreds of new startup businesses and entrepreneurs. And over that period of time, it was not a formal study, but it was based on my own experiences and observations. What I began to notice is that many of those who attended the workshops, and quite often they were Black entrepreneurs and minority groups, who came to participate and learn about this technical assistance that we offered, they came with the greatest of ideas in terms of new startup businesses. They wanted to open restaurants, they wanted to open salons, they had businesses, they had business ideas related to technology. All of these things were, the great ideas and seeds that had the potential to become large businesses. But what was lacking in those experiences were the essential skills in order to build a team. Quite often these new startups wanted to do everything themselves. So they were not only running the company, but they were answering the phone. They might have been cooking in the kitchen. They were doing all of the things to try to make that business run and grow. And just kind of noticed that there was the missing step of building and surrounding themselves with this comprehensive advisory suite, which is known as the Business Quad Squad. And it's made up of someone who has a background and an expertise in marketing. Because while you might have a great idea for a business startup, you got to make sure that you have an audience. You got to make sure that you have potential customers, and you've got to know how to create a niche around your business idea. And that's where that marketing expert comes in. You also need to have someone who can help you to structure that business. A lot of times we might go to SCORE, or we might go to the Small Business Development Center, and that's great. Those are some really great resources that are free to us, and they give us great advice, but sometimes we don't always have the ability to have an immediate source to get information. So that's where your legal advisor comes in. You also need to have an accountant, someone who can help you to measure whether or not your business is headed in the right direction. You may not want to know and understand what a balance sheet is, or a P&L statement, or cash flow projection, pro forma. All of those things can be quite complicated. But if you have someone like an accountant to help advise you, it really helps you to get a good picture, a snapshot of what direction your business is going in. It also, for the fourth component, is helpful to build relationships with bankers. Quite often we go into a financial institution or a bank and we feel a bit intimidated, because we kind of assume that, if we put our money there, then, we're going to be taken care of. But there's also that step that's required of actually meeting the person who can become your personal banker and building the relationship with them. Because once you get all of the other pieces of this together, you've got your marketing expert, you've got your legal structure in place, you have your accountant, you need to be able to present that information to a banker so that they can help you find the working capital in order to seed, fund, and grow your business. So that is how this Business Quad Squad concept came into place. Again, working with hundreds of entrepreneurs who needed essential skills like team building, building a business plan, finding capital, and just knowing how to look at themselves as leaders and be able to structure and build these working relationships. I would also say, in terms of the research that's been done so far on the Greenwood District and Black Wall Street, what we found in the literature that we've been looking at is that a lot of this that has applied to the Business Quad Squads concept is the type of things that they were doing in that time. There was a lot of community wealth building that came from, social interdependence on each other. From ownership and community reinvestment. We found that dollars circulated within the community 30 to 100 times before it left that community. And that's really important when it comes to successful business ownership, as well as building a community around that concept. So as far as like the emerging themes that we found so far with Black Wall Street here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, is that these things really stood out amongst those best practices. As we mentioned, there was access to resources. They leaned on each other to help strategically align their goals. There was a lot of collaboration going on at the time amongst each other. We found that there were a superior education system as well as a healthcare system in place. They had a strong communication system in terms of media. There was a newspaper, there was a museum, there were all kinds of things to make sure that communication was flourishing. And then again, ownership was very, very important to that community in that given time. So I want to turn it over now to Dr. Lamel, who's going to talk a little bit more about another essential element, again, that aligns well with the Business Quad Squad. And that's once you build that team, how do you manage that team with good project management model?
Thank you, Rochelle. So, and one of the reasons why this research is so important is because, you know, like I said, the existing theories for small business ownership didn't apply directly to minority and women small business owners. So there was a gap in leadership, or a gap in the literature, excuse me, in regards to minority and women small business owners outside of what those challenges are. And there are several extrinsic challenges for minority and women small business owners, and we're probably very aware of those, from not having access to capital, not having the same networks, not having the same relationships, several challenges, you know, whether it be education and skills that that our entrepreneurs don't always have equal access to. However, there are successful minority and women small business owners. So my desire was to speak with these successful MWBEs who were doing contracts with the government at high levels multiple times, and who were garnering that success within their business, and ask them to share, okay, tell me, how are you doing it? Because yes, there are extrinsic challenges that we will always have to face, things on the outside that we will always have, have these challenges, but what can we do internally to fix it? And one of the top overwhelming themes for my research was project management. Those businesses who were challenged in the area of project management suffered. Those businesses who had a smooth project management model, a project management tool, they understood the importance of project management, those were the ones that succeeded. So this particular model, out of my research, I was able to develop a model of best practices, and these are words directly from the successful NWBEs. We came up with the model of best practices, and we also created the framework for project management. So these are the areas of significance. And what's important is that these areas work very closely with the Business Quad Squad. So another challenge we found is that small business owners wear so many hats, and we try to do it all ourselves. The Business Quad Squad takes us out of that mindset and reminds us that, no, you need to find someone that has the expertise in this particular area. And so this is how this can be forged on campus, bringing in those different areas, bringing in the law students, bringing in the marketing students, bringing in the different areas where the small business owner needs to have that level of expertise beyond just the class, but partnering and building relationships in areas outside of their own particular area of expertise. So the project management framework and the best practices model are two of the main tools that we use to inform small business owners that are looking to go beyond just doing business as usual, but really looking to succeed, whether it be, like I said, in a government contract or a corporate contract or business to business.
One of the things I neglected to mention when I was referring to the Business Quad Squad is that I found a lot of times those small business owners did not look or seek these advisors because they found that, or at least the perception was that it would be out of their budget. Like when you think about hiring an attorney, I can just imagine the first thing you think about is the retainer, which is usually in the thousands, or either if you're being paid by the hour or you're paying them by the hour, it's hundreds of dollars per hour. But what we found is that there are ways to find solutions in order to build your Business Quad Squad in an affordable way, to where instead of paying tens of thousands of dollars to build the team of advisors, you're looking more in the range of $500 or less per month in order to have this advisory team together to help you. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like. We have a program that we're developing where we're going to have a panel of these 4 different experts who will be a part of this training exercise, and they'll look at case studies to where they can provide examples, practical examples to the participants who attend these workshops. In terms of this slide, which is talking about campus-focused solutions, I want to bring your attention again to something that Dr. Lamel had mentioned, and that's that researcher-practitioner collaboration. As she mentioned, she has done a formal research with her Delphi study, and a lot of the information that I've gathered has come from practical application on the ground, working face-to-face for many years with the business owners that I had the pleasure of assisting. And so in that process, when we came together and began to compare some of our experiences, we figured that a lot of this could be brought to campuses because it's practical as well as research-based. And so one of those is an app that Table Salt Group is in the process of developing for students of entrepreneurship. It began through a process of hiring interns from an organization here in Texas. It's the Texas Workforce Solutions. And the way it works is they provide you with the interns, and they also pay their salaries for a certain period of time. And in turn, what we do is give them a real world project that they can work on and hopefully bring it to market if possible. And so they came up with this app based on the Business Quad Squad, and they entitled it Be Better, Do Better, Don't Be Salty. We're still waiting to see how that's going to turn out. As I mentioned, it's in development. And we'll be also doing some focus groups to get people involved and get some feedback on that. And we would love to be able to bring that solution to your campuses and start a dialogue about that in terms of how that could look. Also in collaboration with the Clever site, and I'm sure Dr. Lamel will be able to talk more about it, she's putting together what is termed the Clever Strategies course. Did you want to talk more about that in detail?
Sure. It's a curriculum basically used to help small business owners or aspiring entrepreneurs from the beginning to, launch. So whether it's coming up, getting clear on their vision, understanding their leadership, the execution, value proposition, implementation of their ideas, as well as the understanding the economics, relationships, and resources. So we cover all of that in the course from, like I said, from a very high level overview level all the way down to having the one-on-one coaching with the clients or the attendees of the course. And again, this is a course or a curriculum that was developed right out of the research as well as the practical experience that we've had.
And in this current day and time that we're in, we understand that it's important to have a solution that's both on-site as well as virtual. And so together, the Clever site with Table Salt Group has developed a customizable platform that can easily be implemented on anyone's technology system. And it also is going to be provided in the beginning, of course, with discount access. But as I mentioned, it is a virtual as well as an on-site solution. And we'd love to be able to share more about that with you. So at this point, we have come to the end of our presentation today, but I hope that you have been able to gain some really valuable insight in terms of the historical perspective of entrepreneurship in the era of the thriving Black Wall Streets across the nation. We hope that you have gathered information based on some of our formal studies as well as observations out in the field with regard to the Business Quad Squad and also the Delphi study. And so if you found that information is helpful, we hope that you will contact us. Here you see both of our website as well as email contact. And if you will use this QR code in the middle of the screen, to scan and give us your contact information and a little bit more information about you. It also leads you to a calendar that will allow you to schedule a 15-minute consultation. And if you decide to schedule that consultation today, you'll get a copy of this presentation that we've done that also includes bonus material that did not get included in the version that you were downloading from the conference portal. So at this time, I'd like to again thank you for attending our presentation today. Also, I'll turn it back over to Andrea to see if there are any questions.